certain intrinsic values which are within the work itself, aside, let's say, the economic values that are also attached to it. So I decided to work on both at the same time. Of course, I came from a background from Kumasi where the training was both looking at, let's say, artists working to a point to where they are able to free themselves economically. Like the idea of economic emancipation is very important in order to first and foremost open up your ideas, like maybe push forward certain ideologies that you're working with. And secondly, also to be able to create an economy around, a community around you where there are people that you can think alike with and work with them to a point where whatever ideas you are working with doesn't just begin and end with you, but it's like a community of other people who can support that and take it forward into the future. So for instance, I spend whatever I have, whatever I make out of my work, into investing it back into the work, like making more work, or like the institutions that we built in Tamale, like SCCA Tamale or Red Clay, which we're opening in September, or this recent silo, which was built in the 1960s by Kwame Nkrumah, which I bought recently, that I'm trying to convert into a cultural institution. So let's say within the last 5 years since I started building the first institution, we've managed to build 3 different institutions acting differently.
Are you seriously? Wow.
Yes.
In the last 5
like
years, 3 different art institutions are part of your business.
3 different art institutions.
Can you tell us a bit about those 3 and how they work together with your vision? Both your creative and your business vision. Yeah.
So the first one, which is SCCA, is they are all non-profit institutions, but the first one, SCCA, is more like an institution which is purposely meant for like exhibitions, retrospectives. You know, there are a lot of artists, architects, engineers, people who've done really important work, like from the 20th century. But here, because the state hasn't really invested a lot into cultural, like different kinds of cultural institutions, we don't have those institutions that somehow, one, showcases the work of these icons or the thinking behind their work for a new generation to really understand where we've come from and then the ideas that we want to carry forward to the future. So SCCA mostly dwells on that. So we do a lot of workshops with school kids, we do film screenings, blah, 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 a lot of different things that we do. SCCA, the new Red Clay, which is the new one which we're opening, it's more like a studio complex, which I started working on a couple of years ago. And it has like cinema space in it. So I've been in conversation with the Debani film industry about reviving the film culture, cinema culture in Tamale, where we would have film screenings. We will show different types of films. We'll actually make films with the idea of the community watching films together, which influences the story. Because if you are home cinema, you know, when you're producing a film and you know people are going to buy it on CDs to watch at home, it's different from when you know a community is going to come together to watch your film as a community. There's going to be tall critiques around it, the red carpet. So the idea of building such institutions is how it influences the culture within a certain generation. So we have library space within it. We have like an archive. We have residencies where we invite scholars and intellectuals. We have the Parliament of Ghosts, which is like a real parliament, which I built. Part of the work I did in Manchester.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I built it.
I saw that.
Yes.
The BBC was giving you major props. That one was a good look. You tried to give that our...
Oh, yeah. And then we have the airplanes, which I bought from Accra, which I transported to Tamale, which I took out the seats from to build a cinema. But the inside of the airplanes will be used for learning spaces, classrooms.
Wait. You can't just gloss over that. You bought airplane engines as part of an installation in one of these institutions.
Yes, as part of the institution.
Okay, please. How did you fund it? And you have to tell us a bit more details. We want to know what's going on. Airplane engines. I mean, these things. It's not be small money we can talk. Like how far? Where idea? How did the idea? You're basically saying with all these things, you've been using the proceeds of your work to fund all
Yes.
these, the next ideas. Now,
Yes.
so you have to tell me, with something like this, you're talking about buying airplane engines. So you're going to get into a little bit of how costly that is. But is it that you've had these ideas and then when you have the money, you're like, okay, let's launch these ideas? Or is it that when the ideas that, so it's a revolving kind
It's
of
a revolving
wheel.
thing. When the ideas come and then I have the conviction and I know that I want to do it, I just do it and I don't look back. When I was a child, my dream was always to be a pilot. You know, it was a hidden dream. I didn't become a pilot. I became an artist, but I have a fascination for objects and things around me. So when I started actually working as an artist, collecting objects and all that, and I started building the institution, I felt it was really important to bring all kinds of other objects into the institution. So you cannot deny the fact that when you are teaching a child in an airplane, it's different from when you're teaching a class in a classroom which is like made with blocks. The idea of like the inspiration, like the audacity of it, like who even transforms an airplane into a classroom, because the institution where play is in the middle of it's in Tamale, like in a village called Janacham. So the kids who are in the community, they literally, it's like living in a village where you have these kinds of manifestations which do not even exist within the city. So I think for me, it's that ambition, the idea to introduce ideas into spaces which are in the periphery, which give new sense of inspiration to the people who are growing up there. They think about the world differently. When they wake up every morning, see that there are airplanes in their backyard. Whereas when they probably travel to Accra, they will never get the opportunity to see an airplane because they can't go to the airport and they can't fly based on their condition. So for me, that is very important. So like 2 years ago, because when you're driving past like in Accra, the Ministry of Defense, between the Ministry of Defense and the airport, you always see these aircraft tails at the there.
Yeah, inclined this way. Yeah.
And I said, but these planes have been there. I've been seeing some of them as a child, like the tails. So what are they? And one day, I had already done the Parliament of Ghosts. So I was going to the railways, collecting parts of the trains, and I wanted to buy some of the old trains, which were being scrapped for the institution. But it was a long process because you had to go through the government. So I wrote a proposal to the state to acquire these old airplanes that belong to the military. But you know how the state things goes. I followed up on it for a long. It didn't get anywhere. So I then now approached Starbow because they had these old airplanes which were faulty and had crash landed. So they had sold it to other people. So I followed up on it. My uncle, who is very ambitious, like he's one of those people. He's not afraid of anything. So I brought him on the team. So he goes around looking for the people who owns these things. So he found there was this Hajia who owned the Starbow, one of the old planes and she was living in Kumasi.
So she had already bought it from Starbow.
Starbow to sell it to someone. But the person who was sell it to bailed out. So when I told her I was interested in it, we negotiated and I bought it. But it's not just buying an airplane. That is the problem. Because buying it wasn't too expensive. It was only $30,000 to buy the airplane.
I like how you say it was only $30,000 to buy the airplane.
Yeah,
I get you.
Airplanes cost millions.
Yes,
One of the engines on these airplanes alone costs about $1 million.
Like
the
engine. Yeah.
Yeah, it was functional. So it's more or less like just you're buying it. It was more like a gift.
It's like
I saw it. Yeah. So I bought that one, and then we had to dismantle it with engineers at the airport and then some other people. So it's also about the organization of labor because people haven't done this before, like moving an airplane from Accra all the way to Tamale. And you know, because the DC-10 is at the airport and they use it as a restaurant, everyone is saying that, hey, now, who do you go see restaurant? Because people can't do
that's the only way they've seen it used outside of flying.
I'm telling you. So there were 5 other airplanes. One was in Tamale, which was also a Starbow. There was one in Accra, which was a Starbow. And then there was a Cessna, a Let, and then one Antonov. The Antonov was a biplane which was brought in to Ghana by this German Swiss guy to fly as recreation. And civil aviation wouldn't let him fly it because they thought it was an old rickety plane. So he only had a temporal license to fly it for a few months, and it was just parked there. So once we found it, and I told him I was building an institution and I needed these machines because I thought they will be inspiring to children and how it would expand their sensibilities and all that. He agreed. So he sold that one to me. It was only 15,000. I bought the Cessna for 10,000. I bought the other the left for 20,000, and then one of the Starbow, which was in Tamale for 30,000, and then the other Starbow for 6,000. So in the end, maybe I spent like 100K.
Wait, how many?
There's 6.
100K on how many? On 6
yes.
planes. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So
we're talking
for
dollars,
this
right?
monthly, you said yes.
We're talking
$10,000. $100,000.
$100,000, and this is funded by your own company.
Yes, by the artworks that I sell. So if I make an artwork and then I sell maybe a painting, maybe roughly sells for, let's say, 60,000. In the gallery world, in the artwork, what we do, if a gallery sells a work of yours, you only get half of the money. So it's the half of my money which I'm getting, which I'm saving up and investing into building, into buying these things. Because I know that building the institution, because buying the airplanes is very easy to buy, 100,000. But now dismantling and transporting and reassembling them, that's where the work is. So by the time you're done with that, you spend like $250,000 to be able to do that. Because, yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. I know, because you have to get, like, to dismantle them, it's not a joke. Because the 3 of the airplanes are still working. So in order to like take out the parts and to make them intact and bring them back in such a way, because my idea was to bring them that one day we could collaborate with the civil aviation, like the guys in Tamale, at the airport, who could come there, start the engines, do demonstrations for the kids, because I'm hoping that the institution can grow to a point where it can influence like the kids. That's the reason why I invested into all these things. I'm not looking at now, but I'm looking at, let's say, the next 10, 15 years, what the institution will represent.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you are low-key breeding the next generation of human and potential artists whose imagination will be fed by this investment that you made, and that's amazing, definitely, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. This one, everybody is stand on the line right now. They're saying it. Because I think that is very bold. I mean, really, the audacity you have, that's very bold, because I think people understand the idea of ROI, return on investment, very direct things like, okay, I'm doing this airplane thing. These are some big ideas. I'm investing over 100 to 250K on this. What is the ROI or return on investment? But as a creative who understands sort of the impact of ideas beyond just that simple things, I mean, you are making very bold steps in making those investments, and I definitely commend you. I mean, which really brings me back to that question that we had the last time. I mean, why big ideas, and what gave you the audacity from the beginning? Because, I mean, 10 years ago, if somebody told you that you would have done this airplane thing, would you have believed it?
I always tell my friends, I would have never thought I would do this. I would have never thought. You know, even like the most recent project I'm working on, which is one of these old Kwame Nkrumah buildings that I bought from the States. It's, I bought like I paid like almost $100,000 for the building. So it's like an old building which has been sitting there for almost 60 years. And if, for instance, there are contradictions within the work that I do. So, for instance, I use the idea of private venture to buy, let's say, public spaces that are supposed to be public, but later which will be sold to private individuals and will be gentrified. Then I buy it as a private person only to make it public again, to convert it into, like, let's say, a public institution. And it's important because at the end of the day, if you are, I'm more interested in building institutions than, let's say, building. I'm not interested in like personal wealth or anything. I'm more interested in how I can build institutions which can transform the society which I live in. Because eventually, by the time we're young, I'm only 33 years old and doing all of this. So imagine by the time you're 40 years old, you would have influenced an entire generation of people. The children who are growing up in these times who would get to experience these institutions, you cannot deny that in the next 7, 10, 15 years when you're older, they will think about the world differently than you thought about when you were their age or we are thinking about now. So for me, the influence is what is important. And that goes beyond anything. You cannot measure it with respect to capital. But it's left to you to decide that at the end of the day, you are making 10,000 or 20 or 30,000 out of your work, and you want to invest your money into that because you believe that the future would be different and to create new potentials.
Yeah. So basically, you're almost telling me that to invest in big ideas, you cannot be capitalist as an artist in terms of personal wealth. You can be about your business, but not in terms of amassing personal wealth. I can't buy the Rolls Royce because I have to buy airplanes. What's going on? Is that what is that just a personal thing, or you think as a business philosophy, you think they don't go along? That to have a successful business as an artist, you cannot be so self-indulgent and amassing personal wealth. Is that what you think?
No, you cannot. You cannot. Honestly, you cannot. Because for me, I've always thought that in order for us to all have the wealth that we want in the future, we have to create equal opportunities for the people around us. Because what we have in our world here, like particularly within the continent, is that mostly in our leadership and all that, the system is too greedy. People are always thinking about how they can somehow amass wealth for themselves and their families. At the end of the day, if you are proposing, like people are always saying, oh, we should take our kids to the public schools and all that. But the public schools, if you think about the educational system and all that, it's not the best. But there are people who are in office who take their children to the best schools and all that. At the end, opportunity is very important. You realize that if, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Like, there's one of the children in Tamale called Latif, who is the son of the caretaker of one of the spaces that we are working on. And one of my colleagues at the center, his name is Sakite. When he started his national service with us, I was teaching him like how to use like the drone, like how to fly a drone, to understand the technology, because I use it a lot in my work. That was what even led me into having an interest in buying these airplanes. So I start teaching him, and as I'm traveling around, Sakite starts teaching the kids in the community how to learn this drone, how to understand the drone technology and all that. So we start having drone classes with the kids in the village. And Latif is one of the first students. And now, a few months later, this little boy who is in the village in one of the schools in the place, he understands the drone technology to an extent that he can now teach the children in the community like the drone technology, and he can teach them in Dagbani. I cannot teach him in Dagbani for the sake of my life, but that is what I'm talking about. The idea to be able, that transformation is what we are looking at. And when you are looking at transforming the future, we have to start from a certain point. If you start from a point of comfort and luxury, or because I think the problem is that most creatives, because the creative industry is so difficult, when we make little money, we already want some sense of affirmation. Once in oh, but I made it. I always see these crappy, like, I don't want to get into trouble, but I see musicians always with money on the table and all. I think this is stupid. No one really cares how much money you have. At the end of the day, are you an influence on the generation of people that are coming after you? That is what we are more interested in. That sense of transformation goes far beyond any amount of wealth you're able to build for yourself within a period.
Yeah, no, I was going to definitely say that maybe other creators, but with musicians, we have really bought into capitalism in the worst way, in terms of even if somebody believes and is passionate about transformation and influence, etc., keeping up appearances has become so important that it's a business model. Honestly, like people, it's a fake it till you make a business model in music, which is terrible. Something I don't understand, But it's essentially if you show you have money, then you can demand more money from people. It's almost a business model in people's minds. So thankfully, you are not thinking through that way. I disagree with it. I don't think that especially in our context, it really raises the people coming after us in a way that is relevant to us or our context. You know, Uber capitalism for an underdeveloped country is really a recipe for disaster. But anyway, so okay. So you funded a lot of stuff from your work. So have you ever taken a bank loan?
Have I ever taken what?
A bank loan for your work?
No, never.
Okay.
I've never had that chance or opportunity because in Ghana, the bank will not even give you a loan. Like you're an artist, like who do you think you are? Like it won't happen.
Oh well, yeah. my bank is really is trying to help startups. So I think if you are serious enough creative, Absa is going to definitely support you with the loan. so guys, you can hit up Absa. Absa is not like the others. You might get or whatever. Because I think the reason I ask you that is that I mean, do you think that you've been fearless in how you pursue both your artistic ideas and the structure of it? Do you think that sometimes people are too limited in how to get resources? You know, in our previous conversation and today, you talked about using community of artists and a community of support as resources as well, and all these other things. Are we? What other creative ways or non-traditional ways have you found support for your work? Or even if it's traditional ways, what other bold ways have you done it? Have you ever approached a gallery and say, yo, this is an idea? What have you done that other creative businesses can look at and say, yo, stop thinking of just a traditional model of finding resources?
Oh, well, for me, I'm very patient, honestly. So I also live within my means. So mostly all the 3 institutions that I've built till now, maybe if I think of how much money I've spent on all of them, and I also bought a lot of land in Tamale for thinking about what the institution become, because there are a lot of ideas I have, like how to create like new industries, revive certain industries that for the production of cotton, which was used for the smokes historically, which they stopped because they had to import the yarns from China. And like once you start producing cotton, then you can produce the smokes, different types of textures. You can produce carpets from it. You can produce various upholsteries and all that. So when I'm thinking about it in that way, I always think, oh, how much if I do this project and that project and that project. I also teach, sometimes I give lectures abroad. I will do maybe a certain projects that will be paid an artist fee. So all those things, and I accumulate them in order to use it for the work that I do. So I'm patient to accumulate the money. And then once I have the money, if it's, let's say, 50K or 100 or whatever, I say, okay, fine. This is what I want to do with the money. And then I can put the money into this thing and then start with it. Of course, sometimes based on the goodwill of others, like one of the first projects that I started, like building projects, the SCCA, the land wasn't for me, it was for my father. So my father had bought the land over 40 years ago when he was a young man. So I spoke to him about wanting to move to Tamale and build a studio. And he was very excited. You know, a lot of young people who come from outside Accra, most of them want to stay in Accra and make life for themselves. It's hardly do they ever become really successful and think that, oh, I'm going to move back to my village and settle there and establish a business and then transform, blah, 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 which is very necessary. So for me, I thought I didn't grow up in Tamale, but I said it's very important to go back to Tamale because that's where the thing is. The difficulty is to go back to the place where things are not working and to say that I'm going to insert myself into the system and I'm going to work hard and make things work, not just for myself, but for people who live there. So those ideas, they change. I don't know, it's like, I can't explain it, but it changes you in a way. It gives you this sense of zeal, like the spirit is always so high. You wake up every morning and then you see all the difficulties and things around you and you realize even I think one of the biggest things is about the independence. Because sometimes also when we start things early and we start taking money, borrowing money from it, it has the influence of let's say redirecting the ideas, the original ideas that we're working with. You know, for me, it is very important that as young people, we somehow stay true to whatever that we want to do. And we we really have to take advantage of our independence at a very early age when we are establishing things, and just be patient on it. Because sometimes you're establishing a business or an idea, and you just need time for it to grow, to take a certain form which cannot be influenced beyond that. But sometimes we want to rush it. We want money quickly in order to blow it up. But sometimes when you do it that way, it has the ability to somehow disrupt it. But if you build it to a certain point, for instance, I've spent, if I don't calculate, but I don't think I've spent less than 2.5 million euros on like building these institutions, these 3 institutions in the last 5 years. Buying land and building, because they are vast institutions if you see them in real life.
I mean,
because of what I imagine them to be, like buying the airplanes, building the techniques, blah blah, buying the old spaces, the land and all that. But it's only because I imagined what it would be when I was investing all those monies. Every year you spend like every month, 1 month you spend 100,000, tomorrow you do this, blah blah blah, over the last years. But now if I am going to, let's say, a bank to want to invest into it, you're going to start, your negotiating point is going to start from a different point altogether. But if you don't have anything and you just want to start with, then now they're going to tell you that, oh, we want this and we want that and we want that. And mostly it has the ability maybe to cripple what you're doing before it even begins. But once you build it,
so build leverage, build it and build leverage.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean that's excellent. I mean, because I also love this idea because you are literally creating a new blueprint for an artistic journey on this side, because you are doing big business without a focus on a personal kind of agenda. So in that regard, anyway, guys, you can start asking your questions. I've seen Brighter Koi. I've seen a lot of people asking interesting questions. I don't want to hog it. So start asking your questions. I think somebody said, did he say he was 33? Da Living said, did he say he was 33? Yes, he did. Okay. What sort of team or infrastructure have you put together that has really helped you to succeed?
You said?
What sort of team infrastructure have you put together that has been good for you to be able to enable you to be an artist to carry through these visions? I mean, you've mentioned different people who work at different places. You've never hesitated to call your uncle who will go and negotiate with the Hajia, all of that. So, I mean, you're resourceful, but in general, can you describe to us what type of infrastructure that you put together and how you even came about that? Yeah.
Oh, well, it all starts from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and some of the people I've met there from undergrad. Of course, you know, when you're studying in school, there are some people that you meet, friends that you make, that you realize that, oh, these friends are people who are really level-headed, who have like similar ideas, the way they look at the world. And there are also other people that you meet along the way. They're very good friends. We had one professor in school, Caricature Seidu. We're like true visionary, an artist, really humble. A lot of the things that I'm talking about now really came from him. Like,
yeah. Okay, you're back. There was a phone call coming in.
Yeah, truly, like looking at like ways, looking at the world and different ways in which we can reshape it, the ideas within it, and all that. So his influence on, building, let's say, a community of people around you who can help you to grow and also to be able to push some of the ideas forward. So that has always been important to me. I have a very good friend from there. He also studied there, Benjamin Okante. He was my studio assistant for a couple of years. We did a lot of projects together, from the National Theatre to many things, and even till now, like with international projects and all that. My current studio assistant, Francis Jiwon, who is very good. When I have an idea, like, and that I want to think through, or something that we want to realize, like, yeah, we want people that when you think about an idea, like, oh, I want to buy a train and I want to build a structure and then like hang it in a certain way. They wouldn't say, oh, you are a dreamer. They would say that, oh, it's really fascinating, but how can we do it? Those are the people you want to surround yourself with, like people who imagine, even if they've never imagined it, and then you say it, they're like, oh, but how is it possible? How can we do it? Esinam Damali, like she's an artist from the university, KNUST also. So she works with us at SCCA. She basically like runs the institution in terms of managing affairs and all that. And the artistic director, who is a very good friend of mine, Selom Kuji. So we're mates in the undergrad level, who like very, very brilliant, intelligent guy, like who somehow has created a program around the institution. So I don't necessarily have to be there for the institution to run. And that was the whole idea, how to build something that goes beyond yourself. But it's more like a legacy, something that you're building, but you find other people around you who understand it and who even want to push it beyond how you think or how you dream about it. Bernard Akwe Jackson and Kwesi Oheniaye are people that I worked with, like when I was starting my practice. They are artists themselves, looking at ways in which we can write about art differently and then recontextualize it and all that. Bernard curated the first exhibition at the institution, and Kwesi is curating the next exhibition, which opens in September, together with two curators, Ajua Moa and then Tracy Thompson.
And I remember you mentioned Tracy Thompson the last time.
Yes, yeah. And then you also have like Ernest Sakite, who is our national service personnel, but he's an artist. So for me, when we're looking at people to work with, although Ernest is a national service personnel, I don't see him as a national service personnel. I see him as an artist and as a colleague, someone who, when you're discussing ideas with, he's interested. He's someone who believes that he can do something beyond the ordinary, or he can imagine. So when I'm in Accra, I can call him and say, oh, Sakite, there is this thing I was working on. I was negotiating with these people on this. He doesn't know about it, maybe, but can you go and then maybe talk to them, do this and da 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 da. He'll go talk to them. In the process, he would even make decisions that maybe I wouldn't have made that will push the project in the right direction. So it's very, 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 very important that as we are building, because the system here teaches us to somehow build individual practices. So we always want to be the best, but it's not about being the best. It's about building a community that somehow helps you to even realize your full potential. Because if you build an island and you're on it by yourself, maybe you might make some wells or anything. But for me, it's not interesting. It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, and not to forget, a part of your team, Latif, of course.
Is that?
I said, let's not forget as part of your team, Latif, the young man.
Yes. Exactly. There are so many people. If I start, I'll not end. Like there's so too many people.
Exactly. He's our current favorite. Anyway, a question here from Fui says, do you experience fear when thinking of these big ideas? How do you overcome these fears?
Oh, well, I think his question is that my response to it is that if you have a big idea, if you have an idea and the idea doesn't scare you, then forget about the idea. I think that's always people always want safe ideas. They're always like, oh, I want to know what it will become before I do it. No, but sometimes you start something, it seems stupid, it seems radical, but that is where the juice is. Because the idea to be able to start something and not know where it will end. For me, that's what I always find very exciting. People always say, oh, he's a madman. He started this thing and then he developed an interest in something else. But that is how we build things, because the idea is never static. You start something and you realize that, oh, but this has the ability to reshape the world in terms of thinking, blah, blah, blah. Why not? Then you push the idea forward. For me, if I think about something and it seems too easy, I question it. I'm like, if it was easy, everyone would have done it. Yeah, I always want to do something that people would think about ordinarily, would think about whether this one is a no-go area. The no-go area is the thing that I want to
That's where
tackle.
you're going. You go in the no-go area. If we have to
I go
put
in the
a
no-go.
sign in the direction,
Yeah,
the road sign, when you see no-go,
yeah,
don't go.
wrong turn. The evil forest. That's what I'm going to.
Nice. So Barney Harley says, how does how do these funds sound so normal to you that it doesn't distort your discipline on spending with caution and not voluminously? He's talking about the figures. I think the investment, the kind of investment you're making in these institutions and stuff. He says you make it sound normal, and don't they like? Doesn't it sometimes distort your
No.
discipline when you're spending?
Not at all. When I'm spending money on myself, like if I'm going to buy a phone, then I know that I'm buying the phone because it has a certain function for me. I just don't want to buy a phone because I'm buying it for life, like for as luxury. I don't have that lifestyle in myself. I'm not one who spends money on myself. I wear the same clothes. I'm always in t-shirts. In the world, it's too hectic to yeah. The world is too hectic to want to be posh in a way. I don't have that in me, so that is a
I love
gift
it.
from my side.
I
So
love it.
you have to, I don't know, like people are so, when they hear money, of course money is hard to come by, I understand, but for me, when I'm spending money and I know that I'm spending it for the right reasons, I don't think about it, because at the end of the day, the money, like, and I think what also scares people is that I'm doing all of this because I'm doing all of this and it's a non-profit institution. It's not as if it's a business like a factory that is going to bring money. But then again, as I said, the money aspect to it is what that institution does to the thinking of the generation. In the next 10, 20 years, when these kids grow up and they want to become scientists or astronauts or whatever, based on their growing and then the influences that they had, that is when that economic transformation happens. But even now, some of the things that I do, it influences the body of my work within the world in terms of looking at art. So it's like one thing influences one other thing, then it generates money and it comes back and then it goes back into the work and it develops. Yeah,
Nice.
it's yeah.
Nice. So my guy James Bartlett, I don't know if you met James. He used to be with Mokada Museum, but he does other stuff now. James Bartlett is asking, what will your ideal gallery relationship be? And he also says to ask you if you want to do a show in NYC with him.
What's my ideal what?
Gallery relationship. What would your ideal gallery relationship be? I
Okay.
guess what does it look like? I mean, he comes from the
Yes.
gallery background, so I guess.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Oh, well, for me, it's important that your gallery is supportive. So, for instance, the two galleries that I work with, sometimes I would call them up and say, look, there is this idea, like there is this project that I'm going to do, like there's this next phase of my work that I'm going to do. Can you give me a loan, an advance of, let's say, work that you have, which you're going to sell in the future or now, and then you can deduct it. It's not a bank loan. Bank
It's an
loan,
advance,
it comes with
yeah.
an interest.
Yeah,
So
this is
this
an
one is an
advance.
advance.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yes.
know.
So when
That's
they
one thing
give
at
you
least I know about in my business. Advance. Go ahead.
yeah. So if they give you 100,000, then at least it can help you to be able to do something. Because now sometimes you know when you have money in sopi, it doesn't really help you. So when you have the money together, you know that okay, fine. So for instance, when I was taking all the airplanes to Tamale, I had a certain money which I took from my gallery and said, look, I'm going to go all out and I'm going to get these things and I'm going to take them to Tamale. So I just did that at a go and I didn't think about it.
Yeah,
You
one
know,
time.
but if you're spending small monies on it, sometimes it makes you think, oh, like you drag your feet and all that. So
Yeah.
those relationships are important. Sometimes there are artists who work with galleries and the galleries do understand, the galleries know that the artist's potential is beyond what they present to the gallery, but the gallery is only interested in maybe the work that the artist would make that they will sell. That is not ideal. The artist
Yeah.
has to be willing, the gallery has to be willing to support the artist beyond what the artist represents for them, like the work that they produce for them within the gallery space. Because art goes beyond the gallery. Yeah.
Okay, as to whether you want to do a show in NYC with him, you You guys can talk.
Oh, that one, yeah. He knows.
Oh, you know James, of course, huh? Nice. So Pakwesi J says, do you think selflessness is your biggest virtue in becoming successful?
Yes, I think so.
Wow, okay. Pakwesi, I mean, that means you've listened well to what the man has been saying. Let's see. If you spot any question as well, you can read it. They've been going by quite quick. I like this comment. I like Ibrahim because he's not all talk. He follows through. Really good role model and reference for our young kings and queens in the north. We can do it too. That comes from Dr. Kaiser. Yeah, no, because Ghana there, you know the talk job for here. Oh, wait. Let me see. I'm trying to, guys, sorry, I'm going through the questions. Kwame guy, what's your process in building a team? I think he spoke about that. What do you look for people to help execute? Okay, I guess the second part of his question is what do you look for in people to help execute these projects? I mean, you mentioned people who don't shut down ideas and call you a dreamer expert. So,
yeah. No, people who are ambitious, people who are also dreamers, people who want to realize things, and then also people who are willing to learn. That's the first thing. People who are willing to learn. Sometimes you meet people and then they are not willing to learn. They're so difficult to reason with. Like you're trying to help them to realize their potential, but they think that you're punishing them because you're asking them to look at certain materials or you're giving them certain you had given them certain tasks to do that would help them to develop creatively and then also like spiritually or whatever. And they think it's work. For me, once I spot that, it's like a no-go area.
A no-go.
So yeah, no-go.
I mean, it's incredible because all of the people, all the artists, and a lot of people that I admire who have a certain level of excellence are such learners, are such keen learners. You know? Yeah. They're such keen learners. You know, and my grandfather was 97, still learning and asking me about stuff. I had no business informing him about things, but his curiosity was high. I think we have a final question here before our 1 hour mark. This might be a good last question. What is next for Ibrahim Mahama? What's in the works? And though you don't believe in dreams, what's the next? Well, did you say do you believe in dreams? I don't know about that. And though you don't believe in dreams, what's your next sky shot endeavor? If you can share that is. So I guess this is the what's next question. Where do we go from here?
Oh, well, I'm interested. One of the big things and main things that I'm interested in is how to revive old memories, old dreams and aspirations and potentials and all that. I was talking about buying like this old building in Tamale. And the idea is how to use that as a model to, let's say, build other institutions around the country. For me, what I'm doing is not just, the reason why I'm so keen about doing what I'm doing is because I know that it has the ability to somehow reshape our culture in terms of how we think about our place within our society. Because we are not just people who are born to consume, but we're living in a time where we have to invest into building institutions. So around the time of independence, there was a heavy emphasis on building of institutions. Of course, I'm not afraid to say that there's been a heavy decline in that in our history in terms of building strong institutions. As I said last week, even with regards to, let's say, creatives, musicians, poets, and other people who do make a living out of their work, and then thinking about how they could use whatever, capital that they have, both in the monetary wise and their following and all that, to somehow build new communities. And it will happen in many different forms. You know, it can happen maybe in infrastructure. It can happen, let's say, within the way that the work that we do and how it influences people ideologically. Because one of our biggest problems on the continent is that ideological gap and shift. It's a real big problem. It doesn't allow people to go from point A to Z because they always think that they have to go B, C, and all the way that the idea of being able to think that we can create systems that allows us to portal ourselves from one point to the other rather than dwelling on the dwelling on the principles of the earth, that you have to move and crawl slowly from one place to the other. But instead, if you understand how, for instance, the universe works, maybe you can go into we can go into science ethics, and maybe the more you go subatomic, then the more the principles of the universe changes, and then you can port yourself from one place, or going bigger into the universe. So those things are very, very, very important. So I'm thinking about how I can build these institutions to a point which influences different people, like my colleagues, people I work with, and all that, who can then now also go on to establish other things which can also influence other people. Yeah, so when people come around and then they are making all kinds of promises and all that, sometimes it's a bit depressing, because for me, I'm not really interested in promises. I'm interested in execution. If we believe in something, let's put our hand where our mouth is. If we know that this thing costs 1 cedi to do it, let's not wait for anything. Let's do it. Try it. Put the 1 cedi into it. If it doesn't work, you know that at least you put the 1 cedi in it and it didn't work. Then you can try a different model. But you don't do it at all, and then you tell us that it's possible in the future. Then I don't see what the possibility of a future is.
I'm speechless after that. I think that's a very inspiring point for us to close the conversation. Shout outs to Hanson Akati, shout outs to Maki. People want shout out. People have enjoyed it so much. They want shout outs to be on record so that after we put this online, their names are mentioned. Yeah, thank you so much, bro. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to see you in a minute. Yeah, in the room over here now. So, but thank you so much. I think this was very necessary. Much respect, and looking forward to the next 33 years, and then we'll do a review.
Yes.
All right, thank you, man. Bless up.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, what's going on here?
Asemaba.
You are there now. Yeah, there we go.